Rugby, the sport that's not for the faint of heart. It's a battle waged on a field of glory, where warriors collide with bone-jarring tackles and unwavering determination. Forget the pads and helmets of American football. In rugby, it's grit, skill, and sheer heart that define the game. It's a sport where men and women run tirelessly, passing, tackling, and scoring with the ferocity of warriors of old. Rugby is a symphony of power and grace, a spectacle that transcends borders and cultures. So sit back, America, and get ready to witness the unyielding spirit of rugby as we explore the world of athletes who redefine what's possible on the field. Welcome to Redefining Impossible, the podcast. I'm your host, Keith Corneluk, and today we have a story that will challenge your perceptions of what's possible. We're diving deep into the world of elite athletes with hemophilia, and our guest for this episode is Jess Page, a rugby player hailing from just outside of Oxford, England. Hemophilia severity is determined by factor activity levels, a measurement of how much factor you have in your blood at the time of diagnosis. The more factor you have in your body over time, the better your bleed protection is, which is why many people with hemophilia choose to treat prophylactically. Your doctor can perform measurements to evaluate the factor activity levels in your blood. Learn more about the importance of factor activity levels by talking to your doctor and visiting levelsmatter.com.
I'm Jess, and I live in England, just outside of Oxford.
Jess was diagnosed with a bleeding disorder at the age of 18. At first, she thought her life was going to take a drastically different turn.
Immediately, when I was diagnosed, I thought that this would be a massive change, that you couldn't do the same things with a diagnosis of a bleeding disorder that perhaps a typical person could.
But Jess wasn't one to back down from a challenge. She decided she could still pursue her dreams and adapted her life accordingly.
I can do anything that I want to do, and I had 18 years where I didn't have that diagnosis, and I still did everything that I wanted to do.
Jess's journey didn't stop there. 7 years later, she received a second diagnosis, this time for von Willebrand's disorder. It was a game changer, helping her get the right treatment and understanding her condition better.
Weirdly, having that von Willebrand's disorder diagnosis really helped, because suddenly it wasn't just that I was a bleeder. It was actually because I have these two bleeding disorder diagnoses. It makes it more complex to treat, because I think they obviously bounce off each other and they can make the bleeding symptoms worse than they are. But yeah, weirdly, that second diagnosis was, from that perspective, probably the best thing that could have happened.
Now let's get to the heart of the story. Jess Page, the rugby player with the bleeding disorder.
So I should probably start by saying you're not supposed to play rugby when you have a bleeding disorder, and my centre did advise against it.
Against all odds, Jess pursued her passion for rugby, taking extra precautions to ensure her safety.
I did wear a scrum cap, which is kind of like, it's a bit like a soft padded helmet. So if I did take a knock, it kind of took the edge off whatever that knock was. So that kind of gave me that little bit of extra protection.
She took treatment before games, informed her coaches, and had a supportive physio team.
The physios at the rugby club were amazing, and again they did their own research about what it was like to have a bleeding disorder. And so if I came off the pitch with a little knock or stuff, they kind of gave me that little bit of extra care to try and get me back and get me playing.
Jess's journey was marked by spectacular bruises, which she wore as badges of honor.
I had the most spectacular bruises, and it was like a bit of a game, because everyone would, after the game, compare what bruises they had. I used to just come in and be like, well, I have the best ones. I win that contest.
Looking back, Jess reflects on her journey and the importance of fitness.
I think now I've got a better understanding of how important it is to have good muscle strength to support like the bones and things like that. And I think I would just start, because I just got straight into rugby having no level of fitness. I hated exercise as a child, refused to do it. I remember when I was in secondary school doing PE, I used to get walked around the field because I refused to join in with the sport that was going on. And they were like, well, you have to do some kind of exercise.
Despite not having a fitness background, Jess loved every moment of her rugby days.
Playing rugby was some of the best years of my life. I loved it. I wouldn't do anything differently.
Jess shared her secret to post-training recovery, which involved listening to her body carefully.
So for me, it's just about that balance of kind of seeing if something hurts, give it a break, focus on something else for a little bit. You know, if I've hurt my knee, do some upper body stuff. If I've hurt my arm, do some, mix it up a bit.
She emphasized the importance of differentiating between normal discomfort and a potential bleed.
Does something hurt because I'm training really well? Like, do you know what I mean? Like that kind of ache. Or does something hurt because actually this is a bleed? And for me, there's a really big difference. So something's hurting because it's just uncomfortable, but I'm going to push through it. Then I know I've hit that sweet spot.
Jess learned the hard way that pushing through the pain could lead to longer recovery times.
I did learn the hard way that, by forcing myself back on there, I'm putting myself in a situation where I'm going to be off for even longer.
But Jess wasn't alone on this journey. Her father, who also had hemophilia, served as her inspiration.
The only other person I've known growing up is my dad. He has severe hemophilia, and he's always been an incredibly positive role model for me growing up.
In the bleeding disorder community, Jess found more role models, like Clive Smith, who pushed her to overcome obstacles.
I do know so many positive role models.
Jess is determined to challenge the notion that a bleeding disorder should limit anyone's potential.
I just don't want children growing up feeling like their bleeding disorder is a reason why they can't do things. And that's always been what I've said, is that I did play rugby, but there was things I did to make sure that I didn't put myself in harm's way and that I didn't get injured.
She believes in advocating for yourself and finding ways to achieve your goals.
Your bleeding disorder is never, ever a reason not to do something. You just need to find a way around it.
Jess also stresses the importance of women sharing their stories and facing unique challenges head on.
We need more people sharing their stories and hearing their voices so that other people can identify with those.
Jess Page's journey is a testament to the power of determination, support, and the unwavering belief that you can overcome any obstacle, no matter how impossible it may seem. Thanks for joining us for this month's segment of Redefining Impossible, the podcast. Don't forget to watch the film Redefining Impossible for free at eliteathleteswithhemophilia.com. And thanks once again to Sanofi for sponsoring this segment. I'm Keith Corneluk, and I'll talk to you next month on Redefining Impossible, the podcast, only on BloodStream.